Okay, we're officially kicking this session off. We're so excited. I was just talking to Meredith and we were saying that we love this like more casual format versus like, oh, super detailed slides, but because that way she can like improvise more, talk more off the cuff. And she has so many fascinating insights to share. I actually had the opportunity to meet her in person. She came over for brunch since she was visiting like home in Wyoming, but she's one of hands down the most fascinating, like brilliant entrepreneurs, and I'm so grateful for us all to learn from her. So I will read out her bio so that you have a little bit of context on her background. Meredith is on a mission to inspire other women to pursue their entrepreneurial dreams. She secured over 45 million in grants before pivoting her consulting practice to teach others to write grants. Her expertise has been featured in Fast Company, and her book, How to Write a Grant, Become a Grant Writing Unicorn, is a #1 bestseller for nonprofit fundraising and grants on Amazon. Meredith is a fifth generation Black Angus cattle rancher from Wyoming, now living in the mountains in Valdez, Alaska, and building a remote yet connected company. So we'll also say she did an office hours prior on the topic of writing books that support your business, essentially. So I'll drop that in the chat so that you can check that out as well. And we're so excited for today's sessions. We will talk about how Meredith went from literally having a failing company to now a company around 7 figures. So starting out with that context, would love to hear from you, just to give a bird's eye view and tell us a little bit more about your company and what your company does, so everyone has a bit of context as we dive into nitty-gritty questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many people here have started a business, but it wasn't really quite the business you wanted to run, so you're using the revenue from it to bootstrap the one you want? I think that's a pretty common story. So many of us start in consulting and then try to figure out how to turn that knowledge into a product and sell that. So that was how it all started. I had left my company to start a totally sexy SaaS startup, discovered within 3 months, which I call my personal MBA, that there was no business model. There was no problem to solve, and it was a failure. So I ended up pivoting quickly because I said, well, what can I make money doing? And that's grant writing consulting. I don't know. I was actually at the ranch, and I was home. I'm bootstrapping this full year trying to survive. And I thought, I don't actually have enough work in April. I'll go home and help for calving season. So I'm my, dad's cow calf assistant in laboring, right? And I was there and you're out doing all this work in the hay fields. You have all this time to think. And it occurred to me, why don't I try to turn this grant writing knowledge I have into a course? Easier said than done to actually take knowledge and find a customer online that is willing to trust you to give you your money, right? So fast forward 2 years of trying to figure out, how do you sell a course online, making every mistake a person can make. And I met a co-founder along the way, and she left her stable paying job to come join me. And I thought, great, we can close consulting, we can go all in on the course business, which we did, and continue to lose money month over month over month. Getting to the point that in December, we lost $20K that month alone. And so that burns through your consulting savings quickly. 6 weeks of runway left. And I realized I have no idea what to do. We ended up finding this program called Recurrent Profit, and it saved us. We went all in, super intense, for 3 weeks in the darkness of December in Alaska to restructure our offer, the price point, and the customer we focused on. And the moment we did that, we have been successful ever since. So like January hit, and that was our first month, and we hit 7K of MRR, monthly recurring revenue. And it has grown every month since. So that was sort of the journey of a little bit of divine intervention, because I thought I was about ready to completely quit. I had no idea what to do. It was definitely, because you look like a success. You published a book. I'd had a course that was live and had made 100K. Like, you feel like you should be successful, and then you're realizing, shoot, this still isn't working.
Thank you so much back up. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was going to dive into more like one thing of the many things I love about how you share your journey is just how transparent you are. So thank you also for like diving into like the exact revenue numbers, going from like losing 5 digits of revenue to having per month alone, right? To going to 7 figures in overall per year. So take us a little bit more on your journey, like how, it was the perfect bird's eye overview. Like, how exactly did you go from a failing company to a 7-figure company? Like, and also, what did your darkest moments look like? And how, on the flip side, how does it feel being on the other side?
I think that the way I can best describe the extreme differences in those moments was in November when I had no idea what to do. And it is literally the darkest month in Alaska. And it's sort of before winter starts fully. So it is dark. And that really kind of added to the intensity of it all, feeling so isolated and alone and just wondering, how are we going to make this a go? And so that would be, being the lowest moment, just like losing some faith in yourself to actually make it work when you've had an unwavering belief in yourself. So that would be about November. Then 7 months later in June, my co-founder and I went to Seldovia, Alaska. It's this super funky little fishing town. There's no service there. We had some free flight miles. We went there for my birthday and for just a retreat together. And I remember we were walking along the beach, and it was the first moment I felt like I could actually relax and release from thinking about work, from feeling the stress of like, I have to make this succeed, or literally I'm not going to survive. I don't have money to live on, right? Like, it was the first time I felt like I could depart the survival mindset. And that was something I hadn't experienced for 4 years of hustling. Even before that, even in your working years, right? So in a corporate environment. So those two moments were so different, and it only took 7 months to get there, but it all hinged on these very simple pieces that I think are often missed when we talk about how do you get a business to be viable. And I think sometimes there's so much emphasis on do this, do this, do this. There's marketing strategies, et cetera, but they're not actually getting at the underlying problem of building a viable business model, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I would say that those are sort of the two moments that really stood out the most.
Yes, super, super helpful. And now going into the even more nitty gritty lessons, like I can only imagine like being in this like state of mind of like extreme pressure. And we've all been there. I don't even have to ask you to raise your hands. I'm just going to assume we've all been in these really, really tough, high pressure moments in one way or another. But it's like really hard to like come up with like, you come in like really from the scarcity mindset, from this very contractive space to even come up with like ideas, or like you can't see clearly and execute clearly. So I'm curious, like, what were the things that you've identified that actually helped your business, like very tangible lessons?
Yeah,
that
absolutely. All about tangible. So the first step was actually going back to the drawing board with informational interviews. So I really thought through, all right, I have 400 customers, but who of these do I actually like? Because many of them were really draining, really, woe is me. I can't afford this $300 course. Can I get it for less? And you're thinking, gosh, like how much less can this go? And so doing a series of informational interviews that had the nuggets that informed the product. Because when I focused exclusively on, the 15 to 20 people, like these are who I want in my circle, that I want to serve, I can stay energized over the long haul to serve. They literally gave them, like, they didn't put it in an order where they saw what the product and solution needed to look like, but they gave me enough nuggets that I could then put those puzzle pieces together. And when you're not really learning anything new in those discovery interviews, that's when you're done. That said, that's still a process we do very formally every fall because needs change for a customer. So I'd say that was the first tangible thing, is even if you think you know your customer like I did, I really realized that I didn't know my customer to the level I needed to. And I think sometimes we're kind of delusional about how much we know our customer. And now I can tell you like everything about my ideal customer, like what, if they're coffee or tea drinkers, what their hobbies are, what blogs they listen to or podcasts they listen to, et cetera, like that molecular. So that would probably be the first bit of tangible advice.
And actually, I'll stop there for a second. I can't wait to dive into all the other ones. But so all of us in some form have like clients or customers. And I'm curious, like, how did you even start out? Did you email them? Did you hop on a call with them on a Zoom? Did you send questionnaires? Any like really nitty gritty things? And also maybe things that you found work well, like types of questions or how you structured, and maybe things that didn't work.
Yeah. So I am happy. We actually have an SOP for this. So I'll see if I can't find that afterwards. It could be sent out. But essentially, it's definitely pre-gaming with the questions, a recorded interview, then take that recording and get the text translated. So I used temi.com for that. And then I aggregated all of those interviews into a single Google Doc. So it was like 100 pages of interviews. And whoever did the interview was responsible for going through and highlighting the interesting text, like the most interesting pieces of language around hopes, fears, etc. And once you start doing that, that's when the themes would pop out. And that is literally the text that is in my website, throughout my email copy, throughout anything we put anywhere. So those exact words. And that also helped us figure out what we call a tangible transformation sentence, which is a single sentence of what you do that helps someone determine right when they land on your page if they're in the right place or not. And so that is, we serve a specific identity, achieve tangible transformation so they can avoid number one pain or achieve number one desire. So it's a simple sentence structure, but we would not have, and I'm not even sure we're still happy with it, but if it weren't for looking at 20 interviews in aggregate, we wouldn't have been able to land on the right wording. And I actually sent the whole 100 pages into one of those Google unique word counters to see what were the most frequent words besides and, or, etc. And it was build, love, career, flexibility. Those were the words that were coming up, the most frequent ones. So we knew those are the words that have to be embedded in our communication. And and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to go from serving who you think is an entire market of people that want to learn grant writing to a really narrow niche of those that actually want to build a career as consultants or build a career, to land a new job. Like it's a little sliver. But the moment we went narrow was the moment we took off. And it is uncomfortable to do, but it is the only way I think you can succeed, because otherwise you don't talk to anybody. We're so good at the language we use that very often I have two things that come back from us in our emails or whatever when we talk to leads. They say, I feel like you're in my head and it's weirding me out. You literally know exactly my thoughts. And they think it's Google, like being creepy, but it's really just us knowing what we know them. And then the other one is they think it's a scam almost because it's so spot on that it's almost scary for them. And I just try to tell them, I'm like, look, it's just literally because we're talking to thousands of you. And that's how we know. So that's how you have dialed in your language when people are weirded out.
This is a measure of success. Weird people out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love it. There's a few follow-up questions. And one of them I wanted to ask was, what is the statement that you came up with in your case for your company? That one sentence.
Oh, the statement. Yeah. So I actually was just looking at my site. So we help those ready for a career change, identity, become paid grant writers, tangible transformation. So they have the flexibility to build a life they love. Awesome. Number one, desire. So that sentence structure is we help identity achieve tangible transformation to avoid number one pain or achieve number one desire.
Love it. Thank you for sharing them. Mm-hmm. And then we had two questions actually come up. And how did you figure out the question was, how did you figure out the questions to ask during these interviews?
Part of it was, a little bit of experience, and I certainly went off script at times. I'm sure I could go find those and we can share. I would be happy to share the SOP, but questions would be like, what are you trying to accomplish? We're looking at the bigger issues of like, what are they trying to accomplish in their life? And it doesn't have to do with whatever technical skill you're teaching. It doesn't. That just happens to be the vehicle for getting there. What have you tried before? So I guess I'll pull them up and I'll be able to give them better, but it was very helpful to have a script to be able to run through. It takes off a lot of that having to remember on the fly. And then it also helped us be a little bit more standard because there was two people doing interviews, so we could read them more succinctly.
Awesome. And I will start answering one of these questions as you pull up the SOP. And the question was, is your business model mainly e-courses? And I'll just answer what I believe I know as you search. And it's a mix of community as well as courses, right? So they can join for, I think, $2,000 per year, and they're part of a community, and they also get a course, I believe. Yeah.
So the trick is essentially a membership and a course should not be, in my opinion, treated as separate things, because wherever there is confusion or more than one option, you create an opportunity for someone to get stuck in the selling process. And so we have one product. We actually just added a second one, and I'm not even sure I'm happy about it. We might even take it off. One product, the Global Grant Writers Collective. It's a membership, a year-round membership that includes a course, community, and coaching calls. So having sort of this three-legged support stool to get them to the result is what they care about, right? The course is what people most want because it feels tangible, but the community is why they stay. So I don't think we would have succeeded if we just tried to sell like a grant writer community, because they don't share a same identity or value set and understanding if it weren't for the course content setting that base, because they even help each other find answers and find materials. And we believe in the same methodology. So, we've thought, do we just open up this community to other people that are maybe existing grant writers, and ultimately decided no, because there's so much value in having your course content lead into setting the tone for your community. So it's one offer. And also by structuring it as a membership, then I can have members stay for years because they can continue to get value for years, versus when you sell as a course, people think I take a course, I complete it, and I don't buy that again, right? So then you're back at ground zero in the second year, and you won't actually grow. Like, so whatever you can do in month 0 to month 12 is basically your cap on growth, unless you have a way to keep your members in so you can build from there. And that's what we've been figuring out over the last 6 months.
Yeah. Love it. And yeah, and I agree, like, it's so interesting to have everyone start out with the course, because then you have that shared experience. Like, as a community builder as well, like, we have a very diverse community, and I can, like, the more the community has in common, the stickier the community is, the more they can connect and relate with each other. And if you're curious, I'm just sharing the Instagram of Learn Grant Writing, because I feel I'm not part of the community, but once in a while when I get glimpses of Instagram, I can just tell like how deep you go into the community, how much it feels like a family, how much you celebrating. So it's really great to do that. And then the price is actually not 2,000 per month, it's 2,000 per year, right?
3,000 now.
Okay, 3,000 per year.
Yeah. Okay, I'm putting in the chat box the SOP, so you all should be able to view it. So this is the chat box for customer journey mapping. And so it's this, you're seeing like a behind the scenes kind of messy version, like we still have stuff in the comments, et cetera. And this probably needs updated. We haven't looked at it since fall. But if you scroll down to the final page, you'll actually see the questions. And part of what we ended up doing is we now do, like, you look at people that are brand new leads, you look at people that have been on your email list for 8 months. Why aren't they taking action? Look at new customers that are 6 months in, a year in. And because those interviews and the questions you ask change based on where they're at in the journey with you. And I think sometimes we forget to check out other portions, because that reveals a lot of answers about where you have opportunities. Like, our entire marketing plan for the last 6 months, really the next year, was informed by where we saw gaps in speaking with leads people hadn't bought yet. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's perfect. And actually you addressed one of the questions that was in the chat without even, so someone was asking if you're just talking to existing, but it sounds like you're talking to various individuals, potential and existing. And so that's,
yeah, like, it's a very intentional cross section. We wanted X number in each one of those. And it's something we then repeat every fall. And so, yeah, to answer some of the other questions, how do we come up with the pricing? Boy, isn't that that is so important to get right, because originally my price point was $300-400, and I served them for a lifetime. And guess what? Every new customer I had, the more broke I became. Once I became honest about the cost to acquire and service a customer, I wish I could pin this name, because I don't think it should be CAC, it should be CASK, because it's not just acquiring it, it's what's the cost to service them. And when we looked at that, for us, it's anywhere from $600 to $900 or more. So if I have a customer that's $900 to serve, but I'm getting $400 from them, like, I'm losing money. So the original price point was $1,290. It was $129 a month or $1,290 for the year. And that was, 3 times what it was originally. So that felt like pretty scary at the time. Just 7 months later, after getting all this feedback, figuring out the value delivered, I had a lot more confidence, because we'd seen people starting to get results. So we knew, okay, this works. We increased it to $2,500. And then just lately we increased it to 3K so that there's no discount for full pay, because it's actually, you're more likely to have someone stay on past month 12 if they're paying it like a subscription, if they're paying monthly. So it was more strategic to just say it's flat $250 a month across the board. And I do think that we've now hit kind of that top price elasticity, where going above that could potentially really cost us. It's a lot and it pushes them, but they also they get the results. So that's how we ended up landing on that pricing, which was also just setting the expectation. And I say it every time we do a price increase, because it's an excuse to run a kind of a live launch. I say we increase the price every 6 months to year. We've done that for the last several years, so you can count on it. And it gets people to take action. Do the old customers pay the increased rate or just the new ones? No, they get grandmothered, grandfathered, whatever you want to say, in. So there's people that are paying $65 a month. And it's a very compelling reason for them to stay as well, because if they leave, they have to come back in at the higher rate. So pricing is really important. And if you're feeling very shaky about it and you're just trying to grab a number out of a hat, the way I recommend thinking about it is you need to figure out what the cost is to actually acquiring and serving that customer. And the best way to do that, you could probably look at exactly how we calculate it. But basically, you need to just pull up your financials, your monthly financial statement, and look at your costs. So look at personnel and marketing costs, and then add a buffer, because you probably don't have all the help that you actually want. So if you were to be able to hire that help, what does that cost? How does that cost factor in? Right? And then that becomes the cost that we know we have to be over, right? So that we're covering. Let's see if I have it. So yeah, we calculate the cost of acquiring a customer, the marketing expenses, plus the sales expenses. And then we just divide that by the number of students we got that week to figure out what that cost of acquiring a customer was that week. So marketing and sales, that's why I think we do, half of my salary and half of my, the rest of the team's salaries, et cetera. So go into your financial statements, and that's how you can start looking at what are my true costs, right? Does that make sense? Cool. Good questions. What else do you have for me?
There was one, we have a bunch more.
Did I miss one?
One initial question was you mentioned, I think it was recurrent profit or something. Yes, I tried to look it up online. I didn't find it, but someone was asking, actually, I think it was Jamie, but what was the program? Do you have a link to it?
Yeah, I can find you the link actually too. And if you, you can let them know we sent you. It was expensive. It's interesting. It was $10K a year to get into that program. And we didn't have that when we're broke and dying. I felt very vulnerable making that purchase decision, thinking, am I just so desperate that I'm doing this? But it did turn things around for us, because then we we knew how to completely restructure the offer. So also, you're not promising things that kill you. You don't get access for a lifetime. You get access as long as you're paying for it. So it's a 1-year commitment that then goes month to month, which I really recommend that model, because then people can keep staying, but you're at least for sure getting them through a year, which we need just to get them to results. And people only stay if they're getting results. So yeah, it was Haley Burkhead's Recurring Profit program. I don't think it is for us, who we are obsessed about what we call the 7-star experience, something that we borrowed from Brian Chesky, founder of Airbnb. You can look up his awesome YouTube interview or whatever about that. But the idea is we think a lot about the experience for our customer, and that's one of our differentiating factors. And I didn't feel like that program, was as focused on our experience. But that said, we actually just joined a separate mastermind with that founder, Haley Burkhead, with 20 other founders that are at the $1 million mark, trying to figure out how to get to 3 and 5. And so, I thought it was worth it, but I have some little asterisks of reservations. And Anna had a question too about why not make the community membership an add-on after the course. It's because you have to figure out, think about the arch of an arch and what's that stone at the top? It's the keystone. And it's what actually holds the arch together. And you have to think about, in your business model, no matter what it is, what is the keystone that actually holds the experience together? And for us, it's community engagement. If you're engaged in the community, you are much more likely to have success, to be supported when you get low, to find a friend, an accountability buddy, and get through course content. So for them to succeed, we need them to feel that connection. So it needs to be one integrated experience, because a lot of times people struggle to get through course content in a self-motivated way. And if you can help facilitate, find an accountability buddy. You're going to get stuck. Post about that vulnerability and you're going to get a lot of support. So I am adamant that it needs to be one integrated experience. Plus, why burden yourself with the process of trying to sell something else? The only thing you should ever have to worry about selling more on, it would be maybe like a retreat you host or something that's truly added on. Make one sale. Because you're not going to get 100% of sales again if you're adding on new and new products. So you're ultimately just costing yourself revenue. I think the other thing is you have to think through, remember all those informational interviews we did where we mapped out all the problems, all the challenges, especially for the people in the program. If you don't solve for every single one of those problems, which is actually quite logistically complicated, you don't actually have the best product in the world. And so the only way to solve for every one of those actual problems they experience, which usually is more mental than anything else, is to have an integrated offer. And that's where we came up with the concept of course community coaching calls. It's a very simple, scalable model that won't burn you out either. And that's really important. Okay. Yeah. So Mariana, can you talk about how you translate this to a product-based business? Yeah. That's not a membership model course. Of course. Can you remind me? I know I saw yours. What was your product again? I think it was that's right. Sustainable children's fashion. Okay. Give me a second to think. Is it B2C, I presume? Yep. What's an example of a business that you really love and a kind of role model after? You're totally welcome to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, Mariana, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'll unmute myself. Yeah. So, I mean, we're a sustainable children's clothing business. I would say that we model ourselves off of companies that focus on sustainability, like Patagonia and Eileen Fisher. So the thing that we do that's quite different is that we have a buyback model. So we buy back all of the outgrown clothes.
That's cool.
Yeah. So our focus is not so much on being like the next H&M where it's just like buy more. It's really
that's actually buy less.
It's buy less. It's buy for quality, buy for length of use.
Yeah. Yeah. So one way to think about it is we all have customers that are in like a red, yellow, green, or purple bucket. Red means they're actually not very happy and they're actively telling people not to buy your product. Yellow, they're neutral. Green, they're happy, right? Their net promoter score is probably, 7 or 8. The purple are the people that are so stoked about your product that they're telling people about it. They're actively really influencing your business. And one thing that I would recommend too is like the same model applies of going and doing a series of informational interviews with your customers. So people maybe that are just on your email list and they can get something out of it, like a discount code if they would have an interview with you. I would email the people that just bought their first item and go have a conversation. How did you find us? Why did you decide to buy from us and someone else? What other brands do you like to choose? And not just clothing brands, but totally other tangential products that help you identify, my customer loves this fancy granola. Like they all share that. They buy this fancy granola, right? And then the people that are repeat buyers, and then really studying them to figure out why do they keep coming back for more? So I would at least do that. Have you done any of that kind of customer discovery process, like on a one-on-one interview style?
I haven't. And that's something that's been on my list of things to do. I just am doing like a more kind of quantitative customer survey right now. But I was kind of thinking that I would use some of that information and then go back to formulate questions for one-on-one conversations.
Yeah, it's smart to do that. I'll tell you, you just don't get at the ahas in a survey.
Yeah,
we do them too. It kind of can, but the reality is the gold is in the conversation.
Yeah,
because the ahas happen for you and for them in that conversation. You just don't get that pulled out in surveys. You just
Yeah.
don't. So I really would recommend doing that because your marketing plan is in that conversation.
Okay. That's
So
awesome.
yeah. So like figuring, and I think for you specifically, partnerships make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
With and partnerships can be very time consuming. We've spent a lot of time trying to figure them out and had a lot of failures along the way. So it has to be like a strong Venn diagram overlap, not like it kind of overlaps. It has to be like, these are the same customers.
Okay.
Very passionate about both these products. And the only way you find those super nuanced things that they're both really passionate about is to do these interviews, right? So I think that's where I would start. And in terms of like the revenue though, like how do you make it more recurring? I mean, the buyback model is super smart. Is it something that they have to actively reach out to your company again after their kid has outgrown the clothing? Or is that sort of an automated process saying, hey, your child probably outgrew your outfit now. Are you ready to mail it back?
It's both. So we have automation set up so that we reach out to them after a certain number of months and say, hey, is it time to trade up? But then also we'll periodically just send out a reminder to everybody and remind them about this as a benefit of our products. And so sometimes that's the thing that prompts them to do it, not the automation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially because sometimes automations, they get unsubscribed and lost. Are you using text marketing at all?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. Just curious. That, and I'd be really curious, who is the ultimate buyer? Is it the mother? Is it a friend that is very sustainably focused? Like who's the real buyer most of the time?
Yeah. Most of the time I'm finding that it's mothers or grandmothers.
Cool.
So like the grandmother market is pretty amazing because they'll have multiple grandkids and they'll buy for lots of them. And so they'll come back again and again. But mothers who are sustainability focused, maybe kind of progressive, ready to volunteer for the local organization, that kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that grandmother market's really fascinating because I don't think they're probably getting targeted as much as like, it's easy to target the mother because you know what Instagram account she's following. Yeah. So it would be, and maybe the grandmother is she on Facebook? Because she's on
Instagram more. Yeah. She's on Facebook more.
Right. So yeah, I would definitely go study the heck out of the grandmother market because I don't think your competitors are.
Yeah. That's a great tip. Thank you.
Yeah. Great questions.
And Anna dropped in a question.
Yeah, it's a good question. How do you get continued value in the membership after they have completed the course? Do you continue to provide content or is the value 100% the community? Such a good question. So, because this is something we've been literally navigating. We hit our 1 year mark in January. So it was like, all right. And we, how do we entice someone to stay for a full year? And what I have discovered is that we create some course updates or bring in a guest teacher to do a bonus training about quarterly. And this was sort of happening naturally anyway, because we're doing customer discovery. We're so closely connected to the customer that we know their needs are evolving. And so we were able to kind of naturally see and source those ideas. And actually the hardest part was to stop ourselves from building too much content, because that actually takes time, and not focusing on sales, and instead say, hey, new content's released quarterly based on what you're actually needing. And so that slowed down the demand on your time. So you're not just putting tons more money into a product and not getting more revenue for it. And so the other thing we just decided to do was the advanced content. We were just going to add right into the same course, one product, like there it was going to be, but that doesn't give that kind of exclusivity of getting into this higher level of content where they can say, I've had it all. And so we're making that now a separate product where it says you have to get to a certain milestone. You've had to make 15K in freelance revenue to unlock this course. And maybe they hit that only 6 months into their journey, but most of the time it's taking them, can take them about a year. So by continuing to be a member, they can unlock, which creates that sort of FOMO effect as well, because they see it's there and they want to get into it, but they're only going to get into it when they've actually had the results to earn it. But I do say that you have to be careful with this, because typically have been pretty product obsessed and have a lot of fun creating content. And I'm starting to very much burn out on that because it takes a lot of work to create great content. And I'm really finding that, we have to find other ways to create value that aren't just around content. And where I'm at now is realizing the next level, what they're hungry for is a richer, deeper connection. And the answer to that for us is retreats. So we tinkered with that, doing sort of some small group meetups. We had people considering flying all the way to Seattle or Denver just for literally a happy hour. That proved to us the demand that they want to meet each other. They want to have these deeper connections. So we're trying to figure out how do we do, like a 50 to 75 person event this fall. And I think that is going to be the one of the final pieces. The other thing is grant writers are always trying to source work, and we're actually doing pretty well in some of our experiments there of they're referring work to each other. And we're actually getting inbound leads for people trying to get grant writers. And that creates stickiness. You're not a member, you don't get access to all those grant writing job opportunities. So I didn't really know how that was going to go. And I worried it was going to be a lot of work, and it's not. It's been very organic. So if you can think about what is the thing that they would be so hard pressed to leave and not receive, and it's probably not content. And if you figure out what that is and grow it, you have a sticky product.
That's also helpful. And I'm curious, in terms of the customer research, you obviously did a lot at the beginning. How do you move on? How many do you do right now that you've learned a lot already about your customer?
Two ways. One, that customer discovery SOP I linked earlier, that's a fall process for us. So we're starting to get better as we're starting to grow up as a company of having seasons for things. Like twice a year, we check our email sequences, right? If you come in as a lead, there's 6 months of email content in there. So let's go back and revisit that. Is there an email that's doing poorly? We can swap out, right? So we've gotten to the point where you just have a season for doing optimizations. So I'd say that's a once a year, every fall thing. That said, I also did a ton, 44 calls the week before Christmas of saying, hey, you want to talk to me? You want to ask any questions you can? Here's my calendar, go for it. And it was insane. I wouldn't totally recommend doing 44 calls in a week, but you learn a lot. I know now exactly the top 4 objections, and all of that information I gathered from those phone calls, again, served YouTube content, stuff I can put on my website, stuff you can put into your email copy. It just tells you so much. So if you also just want to do that, you just open up your calendar, send out an email, say, hey, if you want to book 15 minutes and talk about what you love or hate about our product, whatever you want to say, here you go. My calendar is open for a week. Grab a spot, and you'll learn a lot doing that.
How about top of the funnel? So we've talked a lot about when someone is a customer, but how did you figure out how to get people into the funnel, and any other tips on that?
Yeah. So this is the way we all know this. We all know the funnel. And I think a lot of times I've always spent my time focusing on someone that's already thinking about grant writing, someone that's already thinking about this could be my career move. But that's actually down low in the triangle, right? Can't do a triangle. That's pretty low. And I wanted to move up the triangle because I knew I'd have more opportunities if I could reach people that weren't even thinking that grant writing could be a career option for them. It wasn't even on their mind. And that's actually harder, because how do you find those people and get that content in front of them in enough times that it actually passes through their radar? So the single strategy that we've really focused on has been SEO. And SEO is a long-term play. And one of the reasons we were able to do it is because I have a custom website that I know it just performs very well. We went from having 100 keywords, probably only a few that were on page 1, to over 3,000 keywords less than 2 years later. And they bring 6,000 to 9,000 unique visitors to my website a month. And we have over 1,000 leads a month that I don't pay for any of them. You pay for them in the sense that I pay someone to write blog content, but that's it. So an SEO is not just Google. SEO is also YouTube. And YouTube, if someone, particularly in the course world, is comfortable watching and learning on YouTube, they're comfortable learning from you, right? So so it's kind of a longer term strategy, but it's something that we put a lot of time thinking into, is like, how do we create content that will bring people to the page, and then we have great lead magnets of an array of them, so that then we can start our conversation and continue to build trust. So I would say that's been our core strategy. And I really believe that one of the biggest mistakes founders make, especially when we're small and struggling, is we try everything. We try Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, all the social channels, SEO, email marketing, blah, 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 you name it. And we don't actually get good at any of them. And we give up on them before they actually get results. So it's really important to fit or choose one marketing distribution strategy, and keep going with it until you consider it green, optimized. And frankly, green is never 100%. Green is still even ever 90%, because you always have room for improvement. So that's something that I encourage, is thinking about what's that one channel that we're going to go so deep on. One example I can give is there's this woman that sells Mind and Mountain. She teaches fitness training online, and she literally only uses Instagram, which I'm not a huge fan of. We don't rely on Instagram, but she did. That's her only channel. Instagram's the only place. And that has literally grown her business with zero advertising, zero ad spend, to over $500,000 business. And so, it's not that Instagram was the channel. It's that she focused on one channel. So that's I think something we all have to think about. It's like, what's your one channel? And then what are your favorite sources for learning about improving SEO? So to be honest, I do use Ubersuggest. It's cheap. I've looked at all the other SEO platforms that are a lot more expensive, and I like Neil Patel's Ubersuggest. That's where we get the most information. Also, answerthepublic.com. I don't know if all of you have seen that. It's free. Go put in a keyword, and it tells you all of these cool long tail keywords and search terms that people are using. And that has given me a ton of YouTube ideas. And then what else can I say? Neil Patel purchased Answer the Public. Well, I hope he doesn't make it not public anymore. That would suck. It's such a great company. How else? It's just not rocket science. I think I thought it was something that was so hard and so hard to understand, but it comes down to even like when we write blog content. I have a gal that writes blogs for me. I'm like, I need you to study up, like, these are the themes of keywords. It's like, these keywords need to be in every subheading. These keywords need to be in the meta description. The photos need to have it's not just photo.jpg. It's like really a long description and an alt tag. Like, these things aren't really that complicated, but I think a lot of times they get missed. And also, it does depend on your tech. I think if I'd continue to have my website hosted on Kajabi, we would not have these results, because that site just wasn't indexing well with Google. So a little bit does have to do with your actual tech stack.
Where is your website hosted right now?
Well, right now it's actually a custom Golang website that my ex-boyfriend helped me build. And I'm now at the exact moment of like, I have to really cut off that dependency, because it makes me feel very, very vulnerable with my whole business depending on the website and him being able to help me when I get stuck. So I'm looking to make a move to something being simpler. I'm scared about it because I don't identify as a technical founder, even though I'm more technical than I give myself credit. So I'm going to be navigating that in the month of July. And I've been told it's actually not that complicated, because anything we don't know, we're scared by. But it'll be just an HTML and CSS website. Like, it is coded, but that's really not as scary as it feels. And it gives you so much more, better performance. So I guess that could be a subsequent thing we could talk about in maybe August, after I've actually gone through the process of moving a website to a very simple tech stack.
Yeah, and I just have to say, I'm just loving all the real talk, because a lot of things you share might be scary to nearly anyone who hasn't done it before. And it was probably scary to you before you did it. So just showing all the parts of the journey, and just because someone has done it and successfully done it doesn't mean it wasn't scary to you when you started.
Everything was.
Since we're talking, part of what the conversation essentially is around scaling. And so if you succeed in, getting more clients, customers, like, I'm curious, like, what areas did you decide to focus on, you as a founder? And what were the first things that you started outsourcing? And maybe what are some areas you would never outsource, but like, how do you balance that, especially as you are growing?
Yeah. So I've always pushed hiring before I really desperately needed it, and when it was scary to do the hire because I didn't feel like I could fully afford it. And I think that has served us well, because then we were able to expand capacity and keep growing, versus you don't start hiring someone and onboard them in the thick of needing them. My first hires were all wrong. I've made every hiring mistake you can make. And I think the biggest one is this: when it's your first hire, second hire, is trying to hire someone to do the things you don't want to do. Seems like a good idea, right? But the problem is, if you yourself haven't mastered something, you can't really know if someone's doing it well or train them well. So what we ended up, I think really the most strategic hire after, of course, my co-founder, was getting like a admin team to help us. So we use digital solutions teams. They're a group of I don't want to say virtual assistants, because they're more than that. They actually really understand tech and systems. Like, they know how to get into my Stripe, and they know how to handle like all sorts of technical things while also managing my inbox. So I think that's the first thing you have to solve for, is get out of your inbox. I took a 2-week vacation and I came back to having 7 emails I had to deal with. They handled everything else. Otherwise, I would have had 1,000 emails to come back to. And that's obviously an evolution, because I had to learn to let go of control over more and more pieces. So that took a year for me to give them more and more autonomy. But that was a big piece. And then the other thing is, you really have to think about the structure of hiring someone, because they will come and they will go. And if you're growing quickly, they might not be able to keep up with you. And that's where we're at now, is like, I tell my team, I'm like, you have to, like, don't get in cruise control. If you want to be here and you want to create opportunity for yourself, you have to grow as fast as Alex and I are growing. And we are reinventing ourselves every 6 months. I expect the same from you if you want a job here. So one of the ways you structurally do that is you have SOPs. Like, we have a whole SOP playbook. Could I just show that real quick by any chance? Because I think this is really useful. Like, screen share it?
Now you can share your screen. I was just like changing the settings so you can.
Okay, I think this is important, because it's an area I've definitely been fumbling around myself. Okay, everybody, we're going into my messy email. Here we are. So here is our SOP playbook. This isn't even sexy at all, right? But this thing is awesome. So basically, here's the spreadsheet, and it links out to all of these procedures. So for example, here's my YouTube procedure. And the policy is, if there's a procedure, the expectation is it's open when you're doing the task, because otherwise you're more likely to have mistakes, and you'll see ways it can always be improved and optimized. So it's sort of a template, right? Like, what's the procedure? What's the overview? What is the definition of success? Project roles. Here's the video production process, ideation. Let me get something good. Video scripting, video filming guidelines, like everything is in this thing, right? Of expectations of how to produce YouTube content. It's very clear. So when I had to all of a sudden fire my YouTube editor and bring on someone new, she was up to speed in 1 week. Can you imagine if I had to drop everything and try to teach her? We would have just not got content out. So that's important. So you need to start building these if you don't already have them in your business. And as you can see, we don't even have them all built out. Like, podcasts, paid ads, these aren't even built out yet. Unicorn support, like, this is huge, right? Like, how to handle a membership pause, how to send out certificates, like whatever your process is. Email management, I even have a procedure for how to manage my inbox. So if my assistant were to leave, here it is, someone else can be up to speed quickly. The other thing we've done is we've really optimized using Asana for team management. And we have a template for onboarding any new staff. And we copy this so that anytime we bring someone new in, we have like a process for bringing them on smoothly. Because that's one of the biggest mistakes I think us as busy small companies make, is we don't actually make the time to properly onboard someone. So add to Gusto, add to Asana, give them 1Password access, give them to Slack, right? Like, all these tasks. First 14 days of training talks a lot about review the SOPs, offboarding activities, right? Like, it's all here. So hopefully that's helpful. And then the other thing that's changed our business in terms of how we run is our weekly team meeting. Our team was kind of falling apart this winter. And it was partly because I was disengaged from the business, dealing with personal stuff. And we were trying to go through like one point of contact who then distributed communication to the team. And we realized, no, we need to have everybody on hand. And so this is what that looks like. We have roles. So who's the facilitator, who keeps time, and who grabs the action items? We have the meeting purpose, right? Then we have 5 minutes of like good news. So you have a personal win and a business win, and everyone's expected to complete these before you get to the meeting. And it's just a nice way to stay connected with each other, right? Then we talk through like weekly priorities. So, and on Wednesdays, we have a deep work day. I can like stop on all of this, but I think it's useful. I'm almost done. So we have a deep work Wednesday, which means no Slack, no email, no communication, just deep work. And that's where we agree on what those are. Headlines. So if anyone's going to be off and has something they need to do, ideas like IDS, identify, discuss, and solve issues. Those come up. And then this is where action items go. Like if in the meeting, we just, you say things you're going to do, someone is just throwing those here, assigning them, and then boom, they're in your tasks. And then we rate the meeting. And if someone rates it lower than a 3, we explain why, and we get better at it next time. So I hope that's helpful in terms of some of the back end actual operations.
Wow. Yeah, this is so good. I'm so glad we asked you about that. That's so cool. We only have 5 minutes left, so we're just gonna see if there's any final questions. Mariana did ask, like, how do you go about creating the SOPs? Like, if there's it's just start. And I think we even have an SOP template, and it's just you create its purpose, definition of success, and writing out the steps. And the biggest thing about SOPs is that the first version has lots of holes. It's not perfect, but the expectation is everyone has it open when they're working it, and it gets better and better and better. Do you think the YouTube SOP was 9 pages the first time I wrote it? No way, right? So it's just start everywhere, and also setting the culture of if you are responsible for it, you create it. So one thing you can do in your like weekly syncs is, all right, we're going to create, we're each going to create one SOP a week, or help improve one, for the next 4 weeks. And then let's look at what we have, because I guarantee you can think about the repeat processes in your business and easily come up with a list of 10 procedures, but don't think you have to do it all at once. Just do it as you're actually encountering the activity. I think everyone can tell by now why I was so excited for this call. Like every time I spend time with you, like through osmosis, I become a better leader and entrepreneur.
Oh gosh.
I feel like you have quite a few more people who feel that same way.
I'm learning too, everyone. Like I'm learning too, like right alongside you.
And how do we all learn more about business development from you?
Well, business development or business like operations. Curious which one we mean. If it's all of it, I gotta be honest, you gotta have my co-founder on, Alex, because she's actually the operations integrator person. Everything I just showed you, she actually made it work. She made it happen. So if I'll be honest, right? Like I am the messy visionary founder that likes to just mess a team up. And I've had to really learn, how do you stay focused so you don't obliterate your own success? And I think she's someone we could learn a lot from. And maybe we do another version with both of us or just with Alex.
I love it. I'll actually, on that note, I will drop in, first of all, if you have any like follow-on topics that are particularly interesting to you, please put them in the chat so I can keep that in mind. And then I'll drop in a feedback form. So if you can just let us know like what you thought of the event, we would love to know. Also you can include there, like if there's like any follow-up things, like we always just love feedback, like as kind of as possible. You can submit it anonymously. And there's a, how did you find your blog writer? Was it Upwork?
Yeah, I just gave literally who we're working for. She is actually an employee of ours, but she's part-time. So you might be able to get on her calendar. She's pretty busy, but she's so good. Go check out the blog. I'll post the last one that she just did. It was about grant writing for moms. And this thing was just like a work of art. Like it was a satire really of like the stay-at-home joke in many ways, like how it's not all that it's cracked up to be when you really have a baby in your arms.
I love it. I'll ask one final question for all of us, which is you clearly have an amazing co-founder, and it sounds like a lot of like transition. Like she joined when, actually, fun fact, you should go through everyone else like on D&D's platform and look at Meredith's introduction. But one thing I loved was you were saying like, oh, she took a pretty big pay cut when she joined you, and then it just felt so good to pay her more than the job that she had just left, that the company had done so well that was possible. I can't imagine how great that felt. But on that note, like given that she was pretty transformative and all of that, like out of all places you found her in Alaska, like any tips on finding strong partners and how to suss out that it's a fit?
100% date before marriage. That's all it comes down to. So I knew she actually lived in my hometown, knew my mother, was roommates with my cousin, but we hadn't met until she moved to Valdez, sight unseen. On the darkest, snowiest day of the year, we just had 8 feet of snow. She thought she was insane. And so slowly over time, I was getting really busy and I couldn't handle it all. And I knew she had project management skills. So I said, can I hire you for 5 hours a week to project manage? Because I am dying here. And that's all it started with. And over just a couple of months, she put everything in place. She got us into a sauna. She got us so organized. She built company culture. And it became quickly apparent. I was like, I want to hire her. I hope I can afford her for what she's worth by December. And she ended up sitting me down and said, Meredith, we need to talk. And you all know what we need to talk means. You're either getting broken up with or you're going to get some bad news. And she starts crying and she says, Meredith, this is the 5 most joyful hours of my work week. What can I do to come on full time? So the next day I came back to her. It was the greatest compliment I've ever received. And I said, look, like I can pay you what I'm paying myself, which at the time was $50,000 a year salary. Like that's the best I can do. You've earned it. You've paid for it. You've brought that money in. That's all I've got. And then of course, here we are only 6 months later, and I'm thinking this business isn't going to succeed. And she's taken the biggest risk of all. Her family has taken a huge pay cut to come work for me. And to think we turned it around and now her salary is like $120K a year. And that was a year and a half later, plus, you know, all the other perks that come with being an entrepreneur and the freedom that comes with that. And it's like, wow, that risk she took was great, but it might not have ended up that way. Like I've tried other people as well. And I don't think you can force anyone into a co-founding role, especially when you're really hungry for one. You just have to try a dating project with someone and see where that momentum goes. And the only reason I think they're a true co-founder is if they actually bring in revenue, they do activities that influence revenue, and they also are thinking about the business at very random times. Like when you're getting a text about like, here's a podcast that could solve a problem, you should listen to it. That's a co-founder mentality, not an employee mentality.
Wow.
Cool.
I have goosebumps. I think I'm not the only one. This was so great. Thank you so much.
Yes.
This is just fantastic. And this was recorded. Yes, there will be a recording, and we will share that. So thank you so much, Meredith, for so generous.
Yes, thank you, everyone. So appreciate it. Thank you.
And can't wait to hopefully have a follow-on and with your co-founder. This is so great. So happy for you, and thank you so much for so generously sharing everything that you've learned.
My pleasure.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. So great seeing you all and learning alongside you. Thank you so much. Talk to you all soon. Bye.